Hey everyone, this is Jane Tempest, and thank you for joining us here on Game Time Continuum, formerly Darkling Alley. Before we begin, we just wanted to give you the heads up about a video series that we are currently working on specifically about Joel Miller in the Last of Us games. We're putting a new spin on character analysis videos about Joel, and fair warning, we're not going to say anything that we don't mean. We're making these videos for you, not Naughty Dog, so we'll just keep it at that for now. The first episode should be out within the next 2 weeks, so if you want more Joel, or just more of The Last of Us in general, do yourself a favor and subscribe now and hit the notification icon to be notified anytime we upload new content. So, without further ado, let's get started on what we have for you today. We're both in agreement that once you've established a character in a story, give them a name, a personality, a history, and a visual representation, the second the credits roll, it's a done deal. It's locked in. And if you're going to make a sequel or film adaptation, you need to make careful decisions about what you do differently and stay as true to the source material as possible. With that said, we did a brief overview of episode 6 and made mention of how disappointed we were with how incredibly underwhelming Eugene's story was, in contrast with the source material, but we didn't have room in that video to elaborate. So that's what we're going to do now.
Eugene Linden is a character in Part 2 that Dina and Ellie mentioned several times. There are even collectibles related to him, but he doesn't make an appearance because he allegedly died from a stroke at age 73, which we can only guess was the previous summer when his name stopped showing up in the patrol logbooks. So, while we didn't get to meet him, we do learn some important details about him, which paint a picture of a character deserving of his own episode, kind of like Bill and Frank, or at the very least, more screen time to answer some questions that even Ellie had about him. If you stick to the source material, the player should walk away with questions, not only about his morals, but also whether or not he's a potential threat to certain members of the community. Unfortunately, the HBO series stripped away every interesting aspect of his background, reducing him to just another survivor who made his way to Jackson. He runs patrols and grows little weed on the side, something that in the show did stay true to the game. But even still, the most interesting and important details about him were not present in the show. Instead, they decided to insert therapist's wife, Gail, so any hope of learning more about his past in the show will have to come from either Gail or Tommy. In the game, Eugene had found an old library along a route he patrolled called the Creek Trails, in which the upstairs served as part of a workshop for fixing electronics and part living area, while the basement is where he grew his weed.
Oh my god, it's weed. That's a lot of dead weed. This explains a lot.
Dina and Ellie are patrolling the creek trails together in the game. They muse over how funny, but also how lonely Eugene was. Dina reveals that Eugene was a former Firefly, something that Ellie was completely unaware of. This is where things get interesting, and a little worrying. Ellie writes about it in her journal, which the player can look at any time. So he was a former Firefly, now living in Jackson, amongst the man, Joel in this case, who delivered the final blow to the organization that he had devoted years of his life to. And Ellie, the only living immune person, allegedly. According to Dina, Eugene and Tommy served together in the Fireflies, and in one of their finer moments, they slow tortured a Fedra general and killed some civilians when they blew up a checkpoint in the Denver QZ. The Fireflies had a reputation for being incompetent. So, how does Dina know so much and Ellie so little? In the game's narrative, nothing comes up in conversation that's suggestive of Ellie spending much time with Eugene. They didn't run patrols together, as far as we can tell. Given that Eugene was a former Firefly, Maria, Tommy, and of course Joel may have instructed those in charge of scheduling patrols not to pair them. Dina, however, frequently ran patrols with Eugene on the creek trails, and since he was a techie type, he taught her how to rewire electronics. At some point, he felt comfortable enough with her to reveal parts of his past and share his weed. On one of their stops, Ellie finds a bong and assumes it's Eugene's, which was a great way to add to the picture of what Eugene was like. This question suggests that Eugene smoking pot was no secret. This moment happens before Dina tells Ellie that he used to be a Firefly. Turns out that Eugene gave the bong to Dina, and according to her, Eugene always had weed on him. So it's pretty clear that they used to get high together. Why she left the bong sitting out in the open, in a building that other patrols frequent, doesn't really make sense, unless everyone is getting high on patrols, which kind of wouldn't surprise me.
Of course they are. Wouldn't you?
Oh, I totally
That
would.
shit sounds boring. But can you imagine trying to shoot infected when you're fucked up? Maybe not a good idea, but they got away with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so during their run, a blizzard moves in and they need to find shelter ASAP for themselves and the horses. Ellie seems to panic a little. She's on a route she's unfamiliar with. The visibility is low and the horses are struggling. But Dina tells Ellie to just trust her and keep following. In a couple of minutes, they are at Eugene's library. Ellie questions Dina about how exactly she knew where to find shelter. She tells Ellie that she rode by it a few times but had never been inside. Now, I'm going to call bullshit on Dina. I think she absolutely had been there before. So we won't go into those details in this video because we're trying to stay focused on Eugene. But this is something that would be fun to explore in, I don't know, maybe a video specific to Dina. So anyway, if I were Ellie and Dina wanted for me to go into an abandoned building with the front door wide open for God knows how long, I'd be like, bitch, are you fucking out of your mind? Anything could have walked in there. But the library did turn out to be clear of infected or anything else of concern. So this is where we get all of the collectibles related to Eugene. His Firefly pendant is on full display, which the game adds to Ellie's inventory, as well as the letter and family photo from his wife Claire begging him to leave the Fireflies and come home to her and their daughter. All of these will be added to Ellie's inventory if she interacts with them. However, the game forces interaction with this pendant. Ellie cannot progress past the workshop without triggering a cutscene in which she spots his old Firefly pendant. This is what starts the conversation between Dina and Ellie about Eugene and Tommy's time together in the Fireflies. Jackson doesn't have a massive population at this point, but it is growing steadily. It's interesting that Dina knew that Eugene was a former Firefly, but Ellie did not. Dina and Ellie had been friends for years at this point, and for some reason, the subject never came up. Strange, but whatever.
After learning all of this, the player should walk away with at least one question, which is the same thing Ellie questions in her journal. Maybe Tommy slipped up and told Eugene about Joel and Ellie. Imagine how catastrophic the consequences of such a slip-up could have been. Eugene left his wife and child to join the Fireflies, so there's no question he believed in what they were fighting for. But in the end, it was all for naught. The source material offered so many possibilities, but HBO decided to go with Eugene gets bit. Joel ends his life. I can never bring myself to believe that Eugene died of a stroke in the game, simply because there were too many unanswered questions. The fact that he was a former Firefly should have been a huge deal. Again, it was enough to raise questions for Ellie, but unfortunately, we'll never get to know where they were going with this, or what was being suggested thanks to how badly the writers for the HBO series destroyed Eugene's story. Regardless of how badly mishandled and underutilized Eugene's character was in the TV show, it's worth noting that during this patrol, Ellie says to Dina that they should go out like Eugene, as in, die of old age.
How is a stroke old age?
Yeah.
That would suck to die from a stroke, right?
That would, yeah. I mean, unless it's like instant, but
I guess it's the closest to natural death you get, right?
yeah, I guess in a post-apocalyptic world. Versus being taken out by infected or other enemy factions. However, a special mention was made in the DLC Left Behind that I suppose you can say the TV show version managed to stay true to. Here's the clip.
I can't believe Winston's gone.
You heard?
Yeah. Do you know how it happened?
They said he just fell off his horse. Heart attack or something.
Man. Well, how many people get to die of natural causes in this world?
None that I know of.
Exactly.